Tomas Herrera is running across a frozen Mongolian plateau with blood streaming down both hands and something alive pressed against his chest. His boots crack through ice with every stride, and the wind tears at his jacket like it wants to rip him off the earth. Whatever he is carrying is small, shaking so violently its tremors are visible from a distance. Every few seconds his lips move, whispering to the trembling shape against his heart like a prayer he cannot afford to break. Behind him, a cliff drops into a canyon so deep the bottom is swallowed in shadow. Something happened on that wall, and it begins with a sound he almost mistook for the wind. 3 hours earlier, Tomas Herrera is crouched behind a weathered outcrop on the eastern edge of the Altai Mountains, adjusting his telephoto lens and cursing under his breath at the cold. He is a wildlife photographer, 41 years old, with sun-damaged skin and a stubborn patience that has kept him working in hostile environments for the better part of 2 decades. Mongolia in late March is one of the more hostile entries on that list. The temperature has not risen above -15 in a week. The wind carries a fine grit of frozen dust that gets into everything. Eyes lens caps the gaps between jacket zippers, and the nearest town with running water is a 6-hour drive across a track that barely qualifies as a road. He has spent 11 days camped on this stretch of Mongolian steppe, waiting for a single glimpse of the animal he came to photograph. A Pallas cat, the most elusive wild feline in all of Central Asia. A creature so secretive that entire research expeditions have returned empty-handed after months in the field, their camera traps yielding nothing but snow rock and the occasional confused marmot. Tomas has not seen one either. He is beginning to suspect the steppe is keeping its secrets the way it always has, with a silence so vast it makes a man feel like the last person left on a very old, very indifferent planet. Then he hears it, a sound that stops him mid-breath and sends a wire of adrenaline threading through his spine. Not a roar, not a hiss, not any call he can place in his mental catalog. A low, shuddering whine, almost pitiful, like a wounded puppy crying in the dark. It is coming from below, from somewhere inside the fractured cliff face that drops away from the plateau like a broken wall. He crawls toward the rim and lifts his binoculars with trembling hands. At first, nothing but gray stone and ice. Then his lens finds it, and his stomach drops. 30 meters down the vertical face, wedged onto a ledge no wider than 18 inches, is a small, impossibly round creature covered in the thickest fur he has ever seen on a living animal. Its body is compact and low-built like a gray boulder wrapped in a silver-tipped winter coat. Its face is flat, as if someone pressed a pan against the skull of a domestic cat and left the imprint. Its ears are tiny, round, pressed so tight against its head, they are nearly invisible. Its eyes are enormous, perfectly circular, a shade of amber gold that glows against the gray stone. Those eyes are filled with something Tomas recognizes instantly, because he has seen it in trapped animals across 4 continents. Pure, unfiltered panic. It is a Pallas's cat, a Manul, and it is in catastrophic trouble. The creature's left hind leg is jammed deep into a narrow crack in the rock, a fissure created by a recent rock slide, and the angle of the limb tells Tomas she has been twisting against it for a long time. The fur around the joint is scraped raw, thin lines of blood, bright red against the silver-gray coat. But it is her midsection that makes him close his eyes and press his forehead against the frozen stone. Her belly is distended, heavy, unmistakable. She is pregnant, carrying the fragile, flickering future of her species, inside a body that is running out of time on a ledge that is running out of stone. The situation is a living nightmare. Pallas's cats give birth to litters of 3 to 6 kittens. The species is near threatened population declining across their entire range, from habitat loss, prey depletion, and illegal trapping. Every single litter matters. Every single life counts. And right now, a future generation of one of the rarest felines on the planet is trapped on a crumbling ledge over a 200-meter drop. And if Tomas does not act, the mountains will claim them all before nightfall. He watches her struggle, and each second feels like a hammer blow. Every time she pulls against the trapped leg, the rock fractures a little more, tiny showers of limestone dust cascading off the ledge into the void below. The ledge itself is failing. He can see hairline cracks spreading across the stone like veins. She might have an hour. She might have minutes. Tomas is not a climber. He is a photographer, But he has basic high-altitude gear in his pack, enough knowledge of anchors, and rappelling to get down a cliff in an emergency. This qualifies. His mind runs through the calculation with the cold efficiency of a man who has made enough bad decisions in remote places to know exactly what a bad decision looks like. If he goes down and something goes wrong, there is no rescue team, no helicopter, no cell signal for 100 kilometers in any direction. If the ledge collapses while he is on it, they will find his body in the spring thaw, if they find it at all. If the Manul panics and attacks even an animal this small, can open an artery with a single well-placed bite, and at this altitude a serious bleed is a death sentence. He unpacks his ropes anyway. His hands are shaking, and not from the temperature. He drives 2 ice anchors into the frozen ground, tests each with his full body weight, threads the rope through his belay device, clips into his harness, and walks backward toward the edge. The wind hits him like a freight train the moment he leans over. A constant screaming gale that funnels into the canyon and grabs at his body with invisible hands, determined to fling him into the void. He begins his descent. Every meter is a negotiation with gravity and terror. The rock is coated in black ice that makes every foothold a gamble, and his world narrows to the essentials. Rope rock feet hands the gray shape growing larger below. 20 meters. 15. 10. He can hear her now, the wet, labored sound of breathing, each exhale a ragged wheeze. At 5 meters, the Manul sees him. The transformation is instant. Every trace of exhaustion vanishes, replaced by 3 million years of survival instinct. She flattens against the rock eyes, contracting into tight circles. Her lips peel back to reveal sharp canines, and a sound rises from her chest that is less a hiss and more a sustained, vibrating threat, like a rattlesnake compressed into a body weighing less than a house cat. Tomas stops. He hangs in the empty air and does not move a single muscle. He is dangling on a nylon rope over a 200-meter drop, face to face with a wild predator that is cornered, injured, pregnant, and terrified. And any wrong move in the next 60 seconds could get one or both of them killed. He speaks in a low, steady monotone, words meaningless, just rhythm designed to fill the space with something other than threat, hoping that the calm in his voice can bridge the ancient, unbridgeable gap between human and beast. He pulls a strip of dried yak meat from his pack and tosses a small piece near her front paws. She does not look at it. Her eyes stay locked on his face. 1 minute passes. 2. 5. The wind screams. The ledge creaks. And very slowly, without breaking eye contact, the Manul lowers her head and takes the smallest, most cautious bite of meat he has ever witnessed. It is not trust. It is a starving pregnant animal making a calculation her body can no longer refuse. But it is enough. Tomas descends the final 5 meters in movements so careful they border on ceremonial. He places each boot on the ledge as if the stone is made of glass, testing the surface with a slow grinding pressure before committing his weight. The space is impossibly small. The ledge is not a platform. It is an afterthought, a sliver of rock that the mountain forgot to shave off. And standing on it feels less like standing on solid ground and more like balancing on the spine of a knife. When he stands beside her, there is less than a foot between his left boot and the edge. And the Manul is pressed against the cliff wall to his right, close enough that the tips of her fur brush his leg. One strong gust could push him over. One wrong shift of weight could take the ledge with him. He does not think about that. He can feel the heat radiating from her body, and the warmth shocks him because everything else on this cliff is trying to kill him through his skin. He can smell her, a sharp musk, layered with something metallic blood and fear mixed into something ancient. He can hear the rapid drumming of her heartbeat impossibly fast, like a tiny engine redlining inside a body never built for this kind of stress. And he can see for the first time up close the staggering density of her coat. 9,000 individual hairs per square centimeter. The thickest fur of any wildcat on Earth. A living insulation system evolved over millennia to survive winters that would kill most mammals in hours. That fur is matted now, clumped with ice and dried blood around the trapped leg. And something tightens in his chest that has nothing to do with altitude. The trapped leg is worse than he feared. The fissure has closed like a stone jaw, gripping just above the joint, the skin abraded and swollen to twice its normal size. She is holding the rest of her body perfectly, unnaturally still. The only movement the rapid rise and fall of her distended belly. She has stopped fighting. She has stopped making sound. She is watching him, and the expression in those enormous amber eyes has changed in a way that will haunt Tomas for the rest of his life. The fury is gone. The fear remains a deep, permanent undercurrent. But layered on top is something he has only seen a handful of times in 2 decades of working with wildlife, and always in animals that have reached the absolute rock-bottom limit of their physical and emotional endurance. Resignation. She is not looking at him as a threat anymore. She is looking at him the way a creature looks at the last thing it expects to see before the end. Tomas pulls the rock hammer from his belt. He needs to fracture the stone holding her leg without touching the leg itself. The margin is measured in millimeters. A single miscalculated angle, a fraction too much force, directed a fraction too far to the left. And he will shatter bone that is already bruised and swollen beyond anything that could heal on its own in the wild. He positions the chisel edge 2 centimeters above where rock meets fur and draws a breath so deep it burns his lungs. The Manul is watching the hammer. She has gone completely rigid, every muscle in her small body locked, and Tomas can see the whites of her eyes, for the first time, a thin ring of pale showing around the amber, and it makes her look impossibly young and impossibly old at the same time. He strikes. The vibration rings through the ledge, and the Manul flinches so hard her body lifts off the stone. A thin cry escapes her, piercing enough to cut through the wind. But she does not bite. She presses herself flatter against the rock and squeezes her eyes shut, bracing herself the way a patient braces on a table when they know the pain is necessary. He strikes again. Tiny cracks bloom across the stone like a frozen lightning bolt. Again, chips fly into his face, dust fills his throat. Again, the ledge groans beneath his feet. Again, on the 7th strike, the stone splits. The sound is sharp and clean like a gunshot echoing off the canyon walls. She is free. The Manul pulls her injured leg toward her body with a movement almost delicate, tucking it beneath her chest, as if afraid the rock might grab it again. She curls around the limb, her body forming a tight protective ball of silver fur. And for a few seconds, the only sound on the ledge is the wind and the faint, rapid clicking of her teeth as tremors run through her jaw. Tomas steps back as far as the ledge allows, which is barely a step at all, and watches her, expecting the ancient survival programming to take over, expecting her to find some hidden reserve and scramble up the cliff face the way her species has climbed these mountains for 3 million years. She does not move. She lies on the narrow shelf, injured leg, pulled close, eyes half closed, breathing shallow and uneven. The pregnancy has taken everything she had. The hours of struggling in the trap drained whatever reserves the pregnancy had not already claimed. She is empty. Tomas looks up at the ropes swaying above him, then back at the small, motionless animal at his feet, and he understands with a sinking certainty that this rescue is not over. It has barely begun. Then she does something that defies every law of nature, every predator-prey dynamic, every survival instinct that 3 million years of evolution have written into her DNA. She begins to crawl toward him, not away, toward. Her front paws extend one at a time, pulling her body across the stone in a slow belly-down drag, eyes fixed on his with an intensity that pins him to the rock. Every cell in his body is screaming at him to step back, to give the animal space, because a wounded wild predator moving towards you is almost never moving towards you for a good reason. He cannot move. He cannot breathe. She reaches his boots and does not stop. She hooks her claws into the fabric of his pant leg and pulls herself upward, hind legs scrabbling weakly against the rock, her injured limb dragging behind her like a forgotten weight. Tomas stands frozen as the most secretive wild feline in Central Asia climbs his body like a trunk. She reaches his chest and presses herself into the hollow between his coat and his arm claws, sinking through layers of down until they find purchase against his ribs. She weighs 3.5 kilograms. She feels like nothing, and she is shaking. Not from cold, because her fur could insulate against temperatures that would put a man into hypothermia in 20 minutes. This is the shaking that comes from the inside, from a place where every system in her body, muscles, nerves, the fierce wild instinct that has kept her species alive since before humans learned to walk upright has reached the same catastrophic breaking point at once. She is pressing her flat, round face against his sternum. and he can feel the desperate hammering rhythm of her heart through both their bodies. And it is beating so fast it sounds less like a heartbeat and more like a continuous hum. This is a moment that should not exist. A Pallas's cat, the ghost of the steppe. The animal that trained zoologists have spent years trying and failing to observe, is clinging to a human being on a crumbling ledge 1,000 feet in the air and refusing to let go. She is not attacking. She is not fleeing. She is holding on the way. A terrified child holds on to the only solid thing left in a world that has come apart. And Tomas understands in a place deeper than language that this animal trusts him, not because she wants to, because she has no option left. And that makes it more profound than any willing act of faith he has ever witnessed. Tomas stands on the ledge with a pregnant Pallas's cat against his chest and realizes the hardest part has not started. 30 meters of vertical ice-covered rock with an injured pregnant animal clinging to him in wind that has not dropped below 60 kilometers per hour all day. There is no safe way to do this. There is only doing it. He unclips the emergency strap from his harness, feeds it around her midsection, behind the front legs, leaving room for her belly. She hisses when the strap touches her, but she does not pull away, and when he cinches the clip to his harness, she settles deeper claws, tightening. They are connected. If he falls, they both fall. If he makes it, they both make it. There is no version of the next 30 minutes that does not end with both of them in the same place, whether that is the top of the cliff or the bottom of the canyon. He grips the rope and begins to climb. The first meter is when his body discovers the full cost of the last hour and presents him the bill in screaming muscles and joints that feel filled with ground glass. His arms shake before he is 2 body lengths above the ledge. His fingers already numb struggle on the rope, and every gust swings him into the rock with a force that rattles his teeth. The Manul is silent against his chest, her breathing slow and steady, a rhythm he can feel against his own heartbeat. 5 meters up, he pauses on a ledge barely wide enough for his boot. The sky is changing hard blue, softening to amber as the sun drops toward the ridge. When the sun goes, the temperature will fall another 15 degrees in 30 minutes, and this cliff becomes a death sentence. He climbs. 10 meters. His thighs burn with an ache that makes him want to scream, but he cannot waste the breath. 15 meters. A handhold breaks under his right grip, and for one sickening second he swings by his left hand, alone. The full weight of his body and the Manul pulling against fingers that are barely functional. The world tilts. The canyon floor 200 meters below flashes into his peripheral vision, and his stomach lurches into his throat. His right hand finds another crack and locks on with a grip that will leave bruises lasting weeks. He presses his forehead against the frozen rock and takes 3 breaths, each one a short, insufficient gulp of thin air. 20 meters. The Manul shifts her injured leg, pressing against his ribs, and she lets out a moan so quiet he almost misses it. He thinks about the lives she is carrying, 2 or 3 or 4 kittens curled in her warmth. Tiny skulls already forming the flat, wide-set architecture of their mother's face. He thinks about how each one represents a fraction of a species running out of time on a planet changing faster than evolution can follow. That thought gives him something to push against, something harder and more durable than his own shrinking reserves of strength. 25 meters. The edge of the plateau is visible now, a dark line against the fading sky, close enough to taunt him and far enough to break him. He holds on. 28 meters. His hand reaches the anchor. He grabs the spike and pulls with everything left, a final effort that draws a sound from his throat, half shout and half sob. His chest clears the edge. He drags himself forward until his body is flat on the solid ground of the plateau. He does not move for a long time. The wind pours over them, but up here it is just wind. Not the lethal channeled force it was inside the canyon. Tomas lies face down on the frozen earth and breathes. And for a moment, the simple act of breathing on flat ground feels like the greatest luxury he has ever experienced. The Manul is still against his chest, heartbeat, slower warmth radiating into his skin, and they exist together in a space between species, between worlds, between the person he was before the cliff and the person he is now. When he trusts his arms, he unclips the strap. She stays pressed against him for another moment, claws hooked flat face on his chest. Then she releases and slides onto the snow. She lies on her side belly, rising and falling, watching him. With amber eyes too large for a skull that small. She does not run. She does not even try to stand. She just lies there, in the snow, looking up at him, and the expression on her flat, round face is something that will stay with him long after the bruises fade and the rope burns heal. It is the look of a creature that has been pulled back from a place it did not expect to return from. He spreads the thermal blanket over both of them. The sun is gone, the sky deepening from copper to violet to black stars emerging, until the canopy stretches unbroken to every horizon. He wraps the blanket around her tucking edges beneath her body, and she allows it, eyes half closed, breathing evening into rest. He stays awake. He sits with his back against a rock, wind cutting through every layer, watching her sleep with a focus that has nothing to do with photography and everything to do with a promise he made on that ledge. He will not let her die tonight. The hours pass with an excruciating slowness that makes each minute feel individually stretched. The cold is patient and relentless, working through fabric and skin and muscle until it finds bone. And Tomas fights it with movement, with will, with the memory of her heartbeat against his chest, because as long as he can remember that rhythm, he can stay in this chair of frozen stone and keep watch. He checks on her every few minutes, leaning close enough to see the faint rise and fall of her ribs beneath the blanket, close enough to feel the small pulse of warm air from her nose against his hand. She is alive. Each time he confirms it, the knowledge is enough to push back the cold for a few more minutes. The eastern horizon begins to change a thin gold line so faint he thinks exhaustion is playing tricks, but it grows, pushing back darkness until the steppe glows. The Manul stirs. She opens her eyes, pulls her legs beneath her one at a time. The injured hind leg makes her pause, but it holds. She stands. She looks at him, a long gaze devoid of the panic that defined their first meeting. There is no gratitude in it, not in any human sense, but there is recognition. She turns and walks across the steppe silver coat, catching the first light movement, slow but steady, flat face pointed toward the mountains. Within 40 seconds she is gone, dissolved into gray rock and brown grass, as if she had never existed, as if the entire night had been a hallucination, conjured by altitude and exhaustion. Tomas sits in the growing light and stares at the empty place where she stood, and he does not reach for his camera. He has spent 20 years building a career on the principle that the photograph is everything, that the image is the proof and the purpose and the point. But some things are not meant to be captured. Some things are only meant to be witnessed. He returns to camp and sleeps 14 hours, the deepest sleep of his adult life. And when he wakes, he looks at his hands. The rope burns are real. The claw scratches are real. It happened. 3 weeks later, he is still at the camp. He tells himself the light is good and the marmots are active, and a golden eagle on the ridge would make excellent photographs. He knows these are lies. He is sitting outside his tent on a cold morning, hands around a cup of coffee gone lukewarm, when he hears a sound behind him, a soft crunch on the gravel. He turns and his heart stops. She is standing 15 meters away at the edge of the rock field. Her coat is immaculate silver and gray and pale gold, rippling in the breeze. The limp is barely there, a slight hesitation, a memory written in muscle. She is thinner. Her belly is flat, and she is not alone. Pressed against her flanks, half hidden behind her legs, are two small shapes. Tiny, impossibly round bundles of fur with enormous amber eyes and flat, scowling faces that look like they were born already furious at the world. Manul kittens, no more than 2 weeks old, peering at him with an expression of miniature outrage, so serious that something cracks open in his chest. The mother sits. She does not come closer. She has not come for help. She has brought them here so the creature who pulled her from the dark could see what he pulled her from the dark for. One kitten steps out, takes 3 wobbly steps toward open ground, then decides bravery is overrated and scrambles back in a panicked, fuzzy blur. Tomas does not move. He does not reach for his camera. The mother stands, gathers her kittens with a low chirp like a pebble dropping into still water, and turns. 3 steps, 5, 10, and the step swallows them whole the way it always does. The way it has been swallowing these small, furious, magnificent ghosts for 3 million years. He sits in the silence and looks at the empty rocks. His coffee is cold. The sun is warm, and somewhere in the vast, indifferent expanse of the Mongolian steppe, two tiny hearts are beating that would not be beating if he had walked the other way. He did not just save a life on that cliff. He saved the last quiet promise of a species the world is still learning how to see. If this story of survival touched your heart, leave a comment below about the bravest or most extraordinary thing you have ever witnessed a wild animal do.